האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening. Yom Yerushalayim Sameach, Dober V'yetcher. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Bamidbar, Os Daled, section number 4. It's a very long section, so we're only going to be able to do the first part of this section tonight. We're going to take a look at two psukim first. The Zera Shimshon is going to start with a discussion of the first pasuk from the Haftorah, actually, but that pasuk also connects to our parsha. It deals with the idea of counting Bnei Yisrael, the number of Bnei Yisrael, which of course is a theme in Parshas Bamidbar. And then we're going to look at a pasuk from Shiur HaShirim, which he's also going to discuss. So let's start with the first pasuk. This is from Sefer Hosea, the sefer written by Hosea Hanavi, the prophet Hosea. This is Perek Beis, pasuk Aleph. The pasuk says as follows: V'hoya mispar b'nei Yisrael, and it will be that the number of the Jewish people kechol hayam will be like the sand of the sea, asher lo yimad, that cannot be measured, v'lo yisafer, and cannot be counted, v'hoya bimkom asher yeamer lohem lo ami atem, and it will be at that time that the in place of people saying to Bnei Yisrael, you are not Hashem's nation, Ye'amer lahem, it will be said to them, Bnei El Chai, you are the children of the living God, you meaning you are in fact the children of Hashem. So in that pasuk, Hashem looks forward to a time of glory for Klal Yisrael, a time when the numbers of the Jewish people will be so numerous that they cannot be counted, and they will be seen by everyone in the world as the children of Hashem. So that's the pasuk in Hosea. The pasuk in Shiur HaShirim is coming up. This is from Shiur HaShirim Perek Ches, pasuk Zayin, and the pasuk says, Mayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabos es ha'ahava. Great waters, powerful waters will not be able to extinguish the love. Uneharos lo yishtafuha, and rivers will not sweep away the ahava, the love. It's talking about the love between Hashem and the Jewish people. Im yitain ish es kol hon beso ba'ahava. If another man were to come along, if another a person were to come and try and intercede and interrupt the love between Hashem and the Jewish people and give all of his wealth to do so, boz yavuzu lo, only scorn would come to that person, meaning that the loving relationship between Hashem and Klal Yisrael is so strong that nothing, no other suitor, so to speak, no other interloper, no other nation, no other individual can break through that love. And if the person or nation were to try, they would be heaped with scorn. Those are the two psukim, and we'll see the Zera Shimshon is going to talk about both of those psukim right here in the first paragraph. Again, Parshas Bamidbar, Os Daled, section number 4. Medrash Rabbah. The Zera Shimshon starts with an excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah. Al pasuk hanizkar la'el, on the pasuk that was mentioned before, meaning on the previous piece, section Gimel, the third section on Parshas Bamidbar. And now here comes the quote. Davar acher, another explanation on the following pasuk. V'hoya mispar, and the number, and that of course is the first couple of words in the pasuk in Hosea that we just read a moment ago about the number of Bnei Yisrael being so high that it can't be counted. Hadohu dichsiv, this pasuk relates to that which is written in Shiur HaShirim, Mayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabos es ha'ahava, great waters cannot extinguish the love, v'chulei, etc. Ve'omar, and the pasuk continues, Im yitain ish es kol hon beso bi'ahava, if another person were to give all of the wealth of his household in love to try and intervene between the love in Hashem and the Jewish people, he would be scorned. So the Medrash Rabbah quotes those two psukim from Hosea and from Shir Hashirim. Omar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman said about these two psukim, about the pasuk from Shir Hashirim, Bishtei ahavos hakosuv medaber. The pasuk is talking about two different types of love. Rosho medaber bi'ahavoson shel Yisrael. The first part of the pasuk is talking about the love of Hashem for the Jewish people. She'im yiskansu kol ha'umos. And it's telling us that if all of the nations of the world gathered together, litol ha'ahava, to try to take away ha'ava, the love, shebeino levein Yisrael, that exists between Hashem and Bnei Yisrael, einam yecholim, they would not be able to do so. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, mayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabos es ha'ava, great waters cannot extinguish the love. Ve'ein mayim rabim ella umos ha'olam. And the words great waters have no other meaning except referring to the nations of the world. So the nations of the world cannot possibly, no matter their number, no matter their size, no matter their demographics, their power, their might, they cannot in any way extinguish the love between Bnei Yisrael, between Hashem and Bnei Yisrael. That's the first part of the pasuk in Shir Hashirim. The sofo medaber bi'ahavosa shel Torah, and the second part of the pasuk, the end of the pasuk, it talks about the love that Klal Yisrael has for Hashem's Torah. She'im miskansim kol ha'umos ve'omrim, if the nations of the world would assemble and they would say, Anu mochrim kol mamonenu, we will sell all of our property, ve'osim es ha'torah ve'es ha'mitzvos, and we will observe the Torah and the commandments. Omer lohem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says to them, Afilu atem mochrim mamonchem liknos haTorah, even if you sell your property to buy the Torah, bizoyon hu lachem, it will end up being a shame for you. You will be scorned for it. Your efforts will not be accepted. And then the pasuk is quoted, the second half of the pasuk from Shir Hashirim, Im yitain ishes kol hon beso bo'ahava, if a person were to give all of the wealth of his household in love, boz yavozu lo, he would be scorned and shamed, v'chule, etc. Ad kan l'shono, until here is a quote from the Medrash Rabbah. Next paragraph. V'hutema, the Zera Shimshon says, this is very questionable. This is difficult to understand. De'ech yale al hadas, how could it ever occur to anyone to think sheyuchlu ha'umos levatel ha'ahava, that the nations of the world could conceivably be able to nullify the love shebein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael that exists between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Yisrael. Ve'ayin le'el sof parshas Vayakel, and if you want to know more about that issue, you can see earlier on the Zera Shimshon's commentary on the Parsha Vayakel. But here is the Zera Shimshon's first question, and it's a very straightforward question. The Medrash Rabbah said that one of the things, the beginning half of the pasuk in Shir Hashirim teaches us is that if all of the nations of the world, Umos Alom, came together and tried to intervene between Hashem and Klal Yisrael and somehow nullify that relationship, that loving relationship, they wouldn't be able to. So the Zera Shimshon says, is that anything that we would ever think could happen? Is that something that we need a pasuk in Shir Hashirim to teach us is not going to happen? After all, how could it possibly happen? One of the great fundamental ideas of the Torah deals with the special relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. So why would it ever occur to us that such a thing would even be possible, that the Medrash Rabbah needs to bring in a pasuk from Shir Hashirim to teach us that it's not going to happen? What's going on with that thought? Next paragraph. V'yesh lomar, and we can say, the B'perek Gimel de Yom Tov, and the third chapter of Meseches Yom Tov, which is a way, a nickname you might say, of referring to Meseches Beitza or Beya. Omar Rabbi Shimon bin Lakish, the Gemara over there brings down Rabbi Shimon bin Lakish, Shlomar, who says, Shalosha Azim Haim. There are three brazen things in the world, three particularly brazen or chutzpahdik things. Yisrael ba'umos, the Jewish people among the nations of the world, meaning if we look at all the nations of the world, it's the nation of Klal Yisrael, the nation of Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, who stand out, who are remarkable in their azus, in their impudence, in their brazenness. That's number one. Kelev b'chayos, a dog among the animals of the world. If we look at all the animals of the world, then a dog is the most brazen and impudent one and of the animals, v'chule, etc. The Zera Shimshon leaves out the third example, which is a tarnagol ba'ophos, a rooster among the birds. A rooster is the third example that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish brings of a very brazen, impudent creature. And so we have the Jewish people among the nations of the world, we have the dog among the animals, and we have the rooster among the fowl. Uperish Rashi u'Maharsha. Rashi and the Maharsha commentaries explain, what does it mean that they are impudent? Koshim linatseach. They are very hard to defeat. It's very hard to defeat Klal Yisrael, and when it comes to animals, dogs, and when it comes to fowl and the rooster. Shelo yashuvu mipnei kol. Because Klal Yisrael will never turn back in front of anyone, no matter who the adversary is, no matter who the enemy is. Klal Yisrael never retreats and never surrenders. Kemo kelev b'chayos. This is similar to a dog among the animals. You can try and do all kinds of things to stop a dog. Here we're talking about a wild dog, not a domesticated dog. A wild dog is very, very hard to deter from doing what it wants to do. And even if it's attacked, it keeps fighting and it doesn't give up. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from the Gemara and the commentaries from Meseches Yom Tov, Meseches Beitza. VeHaKadosh Baruch Hu eino mashre, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not cause to dwell, top of the next column, Shechinoso, his divine presence, Ella al ha'anovim, except on those who are humble. Kedichsiv, as the pasuk says in Yeshaya, ve'esdaka ushval ruach. The pasuk there is saying that Hashem dwells in all of his glory and holiness on high, and also with daka, the downtrodden, ushval ruach, and the lowly of spirit, velo al ha'azim, and not on the arrogant and the impudent and the brazen. So the Zera Shimshon says, we have a source from the Gemara, from Chazal, that tells us that the Jewish people stand out. They are outstanding in their level of impudence and brazenness. But then we have a pasuk in Yeshaya which tells us Hashem causes his Shekhinah not to dwell with the arrogant and the impudent, but rather with the humble and the lowly of spirit. Ve'im yiskansu kol ha'umos lahakshos lahakadosh baruch hu. And if all of the nations of the world assemble to ask a question on Hashem, so to speak, Lama ohev Yisrael, why do you love the Jews? Imhem azim v'lo anovim. If they are arrogant, if they are impudent and not humble and meek. So we understand, the Zera Shimshon now has helped us understand that question from the Umos HaOlam. We understand why they might think, and why we might think that the Umos HaOlam have a good kasha, they have a good question. Hashem, you love the meek and the humble, and Bnei Yisrael is not meek and humble. They're the opposite of that. So why do you love them? let us come and be your favored nation or nations. Let us take away the love you have for Klal Yisrael, because they are azim, they are brazen. Lo yo'ilu klum. This line of attack will not help the nations of the world at all. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, Mayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabos es ha'avog. Mighty waters will not be able to extinguish the love between Hashem and the Jewish people. So the Zera Shimshon's first question was, he's just answered it, of course. The question was, why would we ever think that perhaps the Ummul Shalom could come up with some thing to say to Hashem, some taina, some claim, so to speak, to intercede and to deter Hashem from loving the Jewish people as he does? And he answered, because Klal Yisrael are azim. We have a certain brazenness, we have a certain impudence, we have a certain chutzpah, and the Ummul Shalom could attack that and point to that and say, Hashem, you love the meek, the humble, the downtrodden, the lowly of spirit. That's not, those terms don't seem to describe your favored nation, the chosen people. So why are you doing that? Next paragraph. V'hatam hu, and the reason why Hashem loves the Jewish people so much, even though the Gemara describes them as being brazen and aggressive, assertive, lefi, because she'adarabah, just the opposite. Ha'azu shelahem, the brazenness and assertiveness of the Jewish people, aso'am zochim lekabel haTorah. It made them worthy and meritorious of receiving the Torah. It didn't hurt their chances of receiving the Torah. It helped them and facilitated their receiving of the Torah. Kede amrinon hasam, as we say over there in that same Gemara in Meseches Beitzah, lama nitna Torah liYisrael. Why was the Torah given to Klal Yisrael? Mipnei shehem azim, because they are brazen. Upirish Maharsha, the commentary of Maharsha explains, Mipnei shehem azim, because they are brazen, v'yilmedu haTorah ketikuna, and they will learn the Torah the way it was meant to be studied. Shahare, as we see from Mishnah and Avos and Pirkei Avos, v'lo habaishon lamed. A shy, quiet, meek person doesn't learn correctly. They don't learn what they need to learn if they're quiet and bashful. Ad kan l'shono, until here's the language of the Maharsha commentary. Ucheshiyesh kushos v'seirutzim. It's only when there's questioning and answer, back and forth, questions and answers. Hainu limud hapilpul v'hahalacha, and this is the learning of pilpul, of deep, intricate analysis, v'hahalacha, and learning in order to figure out what the ultimate halacha, the law, is. That's the kind of learning that you need impudence, assertiveness, aggressiveness, chutzpah for. V'kaimolon, and we hold chade kud shebrichu b'pilpula. Hashem enjoys and loves the learning of deep analysis. The ode, and also, in addition to that, pasuk from Tehillim says, Ohev Hashem sha'arei Tzion. Hashem loves the gates of Tzion, the gates of Zion. That's the pasuk's literal translation. And Chazal interpret it to mean Hamitzuyonim bahalacha. Hashem loves the gates, meaning the place where people come together to learn, the shuls and the batei midrashim, where they are mitzuyonim. They are outstanding bahalacha, and they're learning that leads them to halacha, to come up to derive the correct halacha. And that's not quiet, easygoing, relaxed learning. When someone sets himself out to learn a subject and to master a subject in Torah, a Torah subject so completely that he's able to derive the correct halacha and understand exactly why we do what we do, not just different opinions and different views and different sources, to take all of the views, all of the sources, all of the opinions, all of the shitos, and work through all of it, digest it all, and be able to show and derive why the halacha is a certain way, then that person has been aggressive in his learning, has been assertive and even chutzpahdik in his learning, to question and to not relent or give up until he comes to the proper conclusion of the halacha. So the idea of brazenness and assertiveness and Klal Yisrael being representing those midos, the Maharsha tells us is actually a good quality, and helped the Jewish people, as the Gemara said, be zochet to be merit to receive the Torah, because that's the approach when it comes to learning that a person needs to be successful in his or her study of Torah. Next paragraph. Uchesheyesh chochma yesh yira. In addition, when a person has wisdom, if a person works hard to understand things, to analyze things, and to understand them, this will lead the person to have fear of Hashem. Umemela boyim lidei anava. And through this, the person will come to have humility and meekness. Shehayira mevia lidei anava. Fear of Hashem brings a person to humility. When a person has the appropriate awe of Hashem, understands what Hashem is in comparison to the universe, and certainly in comparison to people, that we're all his creatures and people are minuscule, tiny, insignificant creatures in comparison relative to Hashem, that brings us to humility. Kedichsiv, as a pasuk in Mishlei says, Ekev anava yiras Hashem. The heel of humility, meaning the beginning, like the first step of gaining humility, yiras Hashem, is to have fear of Hashem and awe of Hashem. Uchsiv, and as a pasuk in the Torah says, Uva'avor tihiyeh yiraso al penechem. Hashem wanted there to be fear of Hashem on the faces of the Jewish people. Zehabusha. This means that the Jewish people should feel humility and shame in front of Hashem. Kedei amrinu b'perek daled in Nedarim, as we say in the 4th chapter of the Talmudic tractate of Nedarim, v'ayin sham, and see there. So up until this point in this section, the Zera Shimshon has brought in a piece, an excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah, which discussed a pasuk in Shira and Hosea and a pasuk in Shira Shirim. And we've only looked at the first half of the pasuk in Shira Shirim, which talked about the love between Hashem and Klal Yisrael being inextinguishable, and that the umos olam, no matter what they say and no matter what they claim, even if it relates to the alleged brazenness of Klal Yisrael, the azus of Klal Yisrael, they will not be successful, because, as the Zera Shimshon said, Adarabba, just the opposite. It was precisely the azus of Klal Yisrael that allowed them to receive the Torah, because that showed Hashem they would study and learn the Torah with incredible intensity and incredible relentlessness until they were able to reach the halachic conclusions from the Torah Shebechsav and the Torah Shebal Peh. Now the Zera Shimshon is going to move into the second half of the pasuk. Next paragraph, at the bottom of the second column. V'sofo medaber bi'ahavoso shel Torah. The end of the pasuk talks about the love of Klal Yisrael for Hashem's Torah. She'im miskansim, if all of the umos olam gather, v'chule, etc., anu mochrim, and they say, we're willing to sell all of our belongings to acquire the Torah, v'osim es ha-Torah v'yas ha-mitzvos, and we will perform the Torah and the mitzvos. Meishiv lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem will respond to them, afilu atem, even if you, proceeding to the top of the next page, column on the right, mochrim kol mamoinchem, even if you sell all your property, liknos ha-Torah, to acquire the Torah, v'chule, etc., it won't help you, it won't be successful for you, because you will be rejected. V'lichora kosha, seemingly there's a problem. The matshuva hizo. What is the meaning of Hashem's answer to the Umus Ha'olam? Umaya filu shayach kan. And what does this word, even if, mean here? What's the meaning of Hashem saying to the Umus Ha'olam, even if you sell your property? Halo gam heim amru limkor kol mamonam. The Umus Ha'olam, the way the story was told, is that the Umus Ha'olam had already said to Hashem, we're willing to sell. Look, we're going to sell all of our property. So what does Hashem mean, even if you sell all of your property? They already put that on the table. Hashem is not saying something new. And he says, even if you do a certain thing, they up front, right from the beginning, said, we're willing to sell all of our property. Omnam, however, kishenedaktek, when we look carefully at the dialogue, shehem omru, that they said, mochrim anu va'osim Torah, we will sell our property and fulfill the Torah. Ve'akadosh Baruch Hu meishiv lahem, and Hashem respond to them, afilu atem mochrim liknos haTorah, even if you sell your belongings to acquire the Torah, yuvan ha'inyan shapir, the matter can be understood properly. Meaning Hashem's response wasn't exactly, Hashem didn't use the exact words that the Umos HaOlam did. The Umos HaOlam said, we'll sell our property and perform the Torah, we'll observe the mitzvos. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded and said, even if you sell your property to acquire the Torah, you won't be successful. So Hashem was talking about something that the Umos HaOlam did not mention. He was taking and going a step past what they offered to do and said, even if you do more, even if you sell your property not only to observe the Torah, but to acquire the Torah, you'll still be rejected. So that shows us that Hashem wasn't responding. That shows us why Hashem used the word afilu. Even if you do more than you're offering to do, it still won't work for you. And he's going to explain, the Zera Shimshon will explain what happened in that dialogue. Next paragraph. The Isa b'perakama de Chagiga. It states in the first chapter of Meseches Chagiga, my dichsiv, what is meant by the pasuk in Yeshaya, and here's a quote from the pasuk: "Hinei tzirafticha velo bechesef." Behold, I will purify you, but not as silver. Silver is purified with the use of fire. So Hashem says, I'm going to purify you, but not like silver is purified. Becharticha bechor oni. I have chosen for you a core of oni, a melting pot of poverty. You will not suffer going through fire to be purified. Rather, you will suffer through oni, through penury, through poverty to be purified. Melamed shechizar HaKadosh Baruch Hu al kol midos tovos. This teaches us that Hashem reviewed all of the good qualities in the world, so to speak, good experiences for the purpose of purifying Klal Yisrael. V'lo motza mida tova liyisrael ella ha'anius, and he did not find the right experience for the Jewish people to purify them, ella anius, suffering and poverty. Hainu de omre inshe, this is the meaning of the statement, the phrase that people use, Yo'a aniyusa liyisrael. Suffering is fitting for the Jewish people. Suffering is befitting, in other words, for the Jewish people. It allows their qualities to shine through. It purifies them and brings their strength and values and quality to the surface. Kivarda sumaka, like a red rose, yulususya chivara, on a white horse. The same way that if a person puts a red rose on, let's say, the head or the bridle of a white horse, that beautifies the horse, that makes the horse even more attractive and more striking. So too, anius, so too, suffering and poverty brings forth the beauty of the Jewish people. Uperish Maharsha, the Maharsha explains, Shekara la'anios mida tova, that in this source, in the Gemara and Chazal, suffering or from poverty is called a mida tova, a good thing, shemachaziron lemutav, because it brings Klal Yisrael back to the good path. Uvehefech, and just the opposite, ha'ashirus, too much wealth, does the opposite. It corrupts the Jewish people. Dichsiv, as the pasuk in Hosea says, vechesef here basi lo v'zahav, and I multiplied the silver that I gave to her and the gold, v'chule, etc. And the pasuk says, when Hashem multiplied the silver and gold and the wealth of the Jewish people, they used it to worship idols. to worship Baal. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from the Maharsha. V'im kain, if so, meaning if we see from this source, from Chazal and Chagigo with the commentary of Maharsha, if we see that it is precisely penury and suffering that brings out the greatest qualities and strengths of Klal Yisrael, Umos Omrim, in that case, the nations of the world will say, Ho'il sheha osher ma'akev lekabel haTorah, since wealth prevents someone from receiving the Torah, Hare anu mochrim kol mamonenu, we're willing to sell all of our property. Uvazeh yoel lanu lasos Torah mitzvos, and this should be effective. This should help us keep the Torah and the mitzvot. Sheyiyeh lanu hakor oni, then, and we will also have the cauldron of poverty. We'll also be able to purify ourselves through suffering and through poverty. So that's what the Umos Olam meant. Again, the Zera Shimshon is demonstrating to us clearly the Umos Olam we're not just foolishly and flippantly saying we want to replace the Jews. They had a very specific taina, a very specific claim, and in this case, a very specific proposal. And that was to say to Hashem, we understand that it's anius, poverty, suffering, that has purified the Jewish people and made them fit to receive your Torah and to keep your mitzvos. We are willing to do the same thing. We'll give up our wealth. We will make ourselves poor in order to be able to also receive your Torah. Take it away from the Jews, give it to us. We will be worthy of it, and we are willing to sacrifice our belongings and our wealth in order to do so. Next paragraph. Veheshiv lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem responded to them, Lo dai. It's not enough. She'ein atem yecholim liskos b'Torah. Not only are you not going to be able to merit receiving the Torah, even if you give up your wealth, after you rejected it, you found it unattractive, you found it unworthy from the very beginning. That, of course, is a reference to the famous statement in Chazal that before Hashem gave Klal Yisrael the Torah, he offered it to the nations of the world, and each nation had a reason for rejecting it. One nation said, oh, wait a minute, it says I can't steal. Well, that's how we make a living. That's all we do is steal in our society, in our culture. We can't accept the Torah. Oh, another nation said, it says don't murder. We live through murder. Murder is how we make our livelihood. That's what we're all about. So they wouldn't accept the Torah. So after all of the nations of the world rejected the Torah, Hashem says, you're not going to be able to merit getting it later. Uchavar zochu bo Yisrael, the Jewish people already took the Torah. They already merited it to receive the Torah. Uchasiv Torah tziva lanu Moshe. And the pasuk says, the Torah was commanded to us by Moshe, Mo Rasha Kihilas Yaakov, as an inheritance for the congregation of Yaakov, meaning it wasn't just that the Torah was given to Klal Yisrael a long time ago, 3,500 years ago. It wasn't just given to them approximately that much time ago, and that was it. They don't still own it. No, Mo Rasha Kihilas Yaakov. It was given to Moshe on Har Sinai, and it was given as an inheritance to the whole Jewish people forever. Mo Rasha, it's an inheritance, top of the next column. Hilonu, it's an inheritance for us, v'lo lahem, and not for you, not for the Umos HaOlam. V'goy she'osek b'Torah, a non-Jew who doesn't accept this idea that the Torah was given only to the Jewish people and tries to study and involve himself in the study of Torah, meaning without converting, without the desire to convert to become a member of Klal Yisrael, Chayev Misa, he's obligated to the death penalty based on the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Ela afilu atem mochrim, but even not only can you not acquire the right to get the Torah because you sell your property and are willing to become poor, that's not going to work. But even if you sell your property, kedei liknos es Torah, in order to acquire the Torah, klomar, which means to say, sheti yu rotzim lezakos b'soroshlam shel Yisrael, you want to sell your property to get a portion, to get the merit of the Torah that the Jewish people studied, litein lahem ha'osher shalachem, and you want to get that by giving them your wealth. Al derech eitz chayim hi lamachazikim ba, along the lines of one of the interpretations of the pasuk from Mishlei. The Torah is a tree of life to those who support it. And one of the interpretations of that pasuk is, if you support someone to sit and study Torah, you can get the merit, you can get a portion of the merit from that person's Torah study. Bizoyun hu lachem. It will still be a shame, a source of scorn for you. Meaning, not only if you sell your property to become poor, will you have no chance of getting the Torah, but even if you sell all your property and give the money to the Jewish people and give your wealth to them in order to acquire a chelik of their Torah study, you'll also not be successful. And this the fact that the Umos will not be successful with that approach is similar to what we say in the 3rd chapter of Maseches Sota. Hillel v'Shevna achai havo. Hillel, the great Hillel Hazaken, and Shevna achai havu were brothers. So Hillel had a brother named Shevna. Hillel asuk b'Torah. Hillel involved himself intensively in the study of Torah. Shevna avad iska, while Shevna involved himself in business. L'sof, in the end, Amar Le, Shevna said to his brother, the great Hillel, come, na'aro v'niflog. Let's mix our belongings, our property, so to speak, and split it up between us, meaning, I'll give you half of my wealth, Shevna said to Hillel, and you give me half of the merit of your Torah learning. So a heavenly voice came out and said to Shevna, Hillel's brother, Im yitain ishes kol hon beso ba'ahava. This is, of course, the pasuk, the second half of the pasuk in Mishlei that we began this section with. If a man gives all of his wealth of his house, ba'ahava, out of love, boz yavuzu lo, he will be scorned. Meaning, Shevna, no, you cannot give your wealth to get your brother Hillel's merit in learning Torah, lefi shahayu lo lasos kain mitechila, because Shevna, you needed to do that from the very beginning. That means that if Shevna, Hillel's brother, had come to him when Hillel was young and was just starting his career in Torah study and said to him, let me support you, let me support you financially so you don't have to worry about working, you don't have to worry about your livelihood, just focus on study of Torah. And for that, I want you to share with me your merit, then that would have worked. That, in fact, would have worked and been effective. But Shevna waited until Hillel went through years and years and years of self-sacrifice and living as a poor person and focusing because he was totally focused on Torah study and developed all of his Torah knowledge and his merit for that study on his own without help from his brother. So Shevna missed the bus, so to speak. Shevna came too late to be able to get the merit which Hillel had developed single-handedly and solely on his own. And so, too, that is used here by the Zera Shimshon to explain why the Umos HaOlam, who rejected the Torah in the beginning and certainly never offered early on to come to Klal Yisrael and say, we want to protect you, we want to cherish you and be nice to you and be kind to you, we want to give you money and support you so you can study Torah and do mitzvos. That's not something that happened. So if they want to come and do that later on, it's too late. They missed the bus. They missed their chance to be able to do that. So no matter how you slice it, the Umos Olam have no possible way, no matter what they contrive, no matter what plan or strategy they develop, they have no way of trying to get the zechus, the merit that Klal Yisrael has from its commitment and devotion to Torah observance and Torah study. Yasher Koch for joining in the learning of the Zera Shimshon this week. We look forward to learning together again, God willing, in the Zera Shimshon next week.